Hey guys, in this week's tip, we're going to take a look at one of the most requested topics from both our resellers and retailers alike, creating recipes. Now we're going to have to split this topic up a little bit because there's some very specific and distinct pieces that we want to examine. But today, for this first piece, we're going to take a look at building new items from existing items in our databases. So we're going to build a couple new recipes and I'll show you exactly how to do that. Then we're going to make use of some of those pricing and costing tools within an SMS to make sure that we can maintain those items a little bit easier over the long haul. Now, the entire key to this process was to utilize some of the items that already existed in our universal sample database, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So without further ado, let's hop in. So I hopped over into SMS Pro and I'm in a basic item cost view. The first step to creating a recipe is to go ahead and create a new item number for whatever the heck it is we're going to make. In my case, here's my item number, and I call it the Cowboys Game Day Bucket. Kind of gives you an idea of what we're going to build here. I associated it with my subdepartment 130, which happens to be my deli, because most of my items are coming from my deli department. Now, I have not set up the price table nor the cost table just yet, because I'm going to utilize some of the tools here in just a second to help build that. So once I've got the item set up, you guys know how to do that. That's not something that complicated. What we're going to do then is go to our item menu and pull up our recipe table. I'm going to go ahead and drag that over here. Then I'll pause the video for just a second and take this SMS Pro screen back to full screen so that you can see it just a little bit better. All right, so after a little housekeeping, we're ready to roll. Now what we want to do, the first step we want to do is come up to our recipe table and hit the little hand button right up here. That's going to freeze the recipe table so that we can go grab our other items out of the browser and build this recipe. The first thing that we want to add to the recipe is the item that we just created, what it is that we're making. So we're going to go ahead and add it to it. Now under quantity here, it's going to get a little goofy, so you're just going to have to remember this, and it's going to be like this for every single recipe you make. For the item that we're making, we're going to add a +1. We're making one bucket of our Cowboys Game Day recipe right here. So we added that right here. Now, as we add the ingredients to that recipe, the various pieces of chicken and sausage and all that sort of stuff that you'll see here in a second, we're going to put the quantity as a negative amount because we're pulling items out of inventory to create this inventory item. Now, what you're going to do is browse through your database or go through each of your departments and figure out what the heck it is that you're going to make. I cheated a little bit and I just set up a quick little family code to include all those items that I wanted to include in this recipe here. So here they are right here. Now we're just going to take these items and we're going to add them into our recipe that's been frozen over here to the right. So this next step's pretty easy. There's just one slight little twist in it. So we're going to make sure that we highlight our barbecue sauce. That's the barbecue sauce we're going to use on all this stuff down here. We're going to add it to the recipe. For the quantity in this case though, we're going to do a -1 and we're going to go ahead and hit enter. Now you'll see the color turns red. Green means we're making stuff. Red means we're taking stuff out of inventory. You're just going to have to remember that. Now we're going to come back over to the marinade. We're going to add that to the recipe, but again, we're taking it out of inventory, so a -1. Now I'm going to come to my split fryers, add it to the recipe. In this case, I'm only going to take a ½ pound, or actually a ½ kilogram here by the way it is in our demo database, but you get the idea. I'm able to take ½ pounds or percentages of pounds and throw them in the recipe. Now I'm going to come to my chicken drumsticks here. I'm going to add some of those. Let's add a ½ pound of those. Come down to my chicken wings. We're going to add a -½ pound of those, or actually pull a ½ pound out of inventory and build our item up here. Then last but not least, our beer sausage. Every good bucket has to have some beer sausage, so let's go ahead and put the -½ pound in there too. So you can see here that I've got a nice little recipe built up. We're using all these items in red to make this green item right up here, our Cowboys Game Day Bucket. So this next step's pretty easy too, but it's one you might forget a lot of times, so just try to jot this down and make sure you remember it. We're done building all our stuff. We built our bucket up here. Come up here and turn off the hand. You'll see, whoa, our recipe went away. Well, that's because we're on this item right here. So if we come back to our original item that is the recipe itself, you'll see all our stuff comes back. All the stuff in red again is the stuff we're pulling out of inventory. The stuff in green is what we're making. So now what I'm going to do is review the ratio cost bucket right over here, and then we're going to build out our price table and our cost table. So this next step, what I'm going to do is use the little analysis tool that we have set up in the system. Under the analysis menu, come down here near the bottom, recipe analysis. Now I'm going to go ahead and drag this window down here so we can kind of see everything, and we're going to go through it. Now you can see right up here at the top, that's the same recipe that we built. That's what we've been working on. All these pieces here are the exact same up here. All the system did was pull those into a view that we can look at a little bit better, and look over here. Based off the quantities that we added to our recipe, we've got our cost figure. So now all we have to do to create our cost for the recipe, hop over to our cost table, go ahead and add that record. I've got a vendor already set up in here that's kind of like a house account for me. I'm going to add that. Then the base cost, I can just pull from this table right here. It's already calculated for me. So 14.79, I can go ahead and add that in. So now I've got my cost record for the recipe. So now that we've got our cost and we know what our exposure is here, we can hop up here to the price table. We'll go ahead and add an entry for that as well. And now for our price, let's say $19.99. That's what we're going to price this baby out. We're going to go ahead and save that now. Now we've got our price and our cost. And if I go ahead and just refresh these windows real quick, you can see my margin on this item is 26% based off the cost that we created in the system. So that's pretty cool. Now you'll also notice one other thing here. This recipe table or this recipe analysis view over here changed up a little bit. And the reason it did is it's pulling in now the retail price and the costing. So it's showing us the profitability right here in this table as well. So let's go ahead and examine this ratio cost field here. You can also see some references to it down here in the analysis window. What that is it's how we build out the cost of the recipe that we created. How is that cost born in the various items that we make from all these ingredient items? Well, when we only have one item in the recipe that's created from all this stuff up here, it's 100%. 100% of the cost of all these items is born right here in this item that we created, our Cowboys Game Day bucket. If we had multiple recipe items that I'm going to show you here in just a second, that's when this really becomes a powerful tool for you. But watch what's going to happen. We're going to go ahead and say 100% of the cost of all this stuff up here is born here. I'm going to go ahead and save that, and you can see we get some updates down here in our analysis window. Basically, it's just copying over the exact same stuff that we had because there's only one item that we're creating. So all the cost is born there, and also the margin and profitability statements are there as well. So let's review a few of these other buttons over here in our analysis window. These ratio generation tool buttons here, those are going to be used when we create the second set of recipes that we'll get to here in just a few minutes. The update browser tools over here, all that is, if we hit list all recipes, it's going to update in our browser all the recipe items that we have on file. Now this one that says list recipes without ratio, if we hit that, I'm going to get a blank because I got all my cost ratios set up. But if we hit that and we have recipes built in the system without cost ratios set up over here, that's what we'll pull up. So I'm just going to go back to list all recipes, make sure I'm on my cowboy one that we created, and now we're going to drag this baby up and off to the side just for a second because there's one other pricing tool that I want to show you that's kind of cool. Most of you probably already know about this, but it's a good opportunity to show a tip within a tip. If we come right over here to our price table under our targeted gross margin field and we come down and make sure we're on the retail price, which is the only thing we got set up right now, and I go ahead and I put in here, let's say 30%, and I apply that change, we get our handy dandy little generate price tool here that says, okay, I want my margin to be 30%. I'm going to base it off of base cost that we've calculated over here in our recipe tables. Yes, go ahead and do that, and you'll see the pricing is set up for you. So you may or may not want to do that, but that's a cool little way to quickly get to a price based off your targeted margin. For sure, this next tool is going to be very much appreciated by anyone that utilizes the recipe function. What we're going to do is we're going to simulate your vendors sending through a cost increase on some of the items that make up our recipe. Now to do that, I'm going to kind of fake it. I'm just going to come back over to my filter, launch from my family code, and I'm going to change the cost in the database for two items. And I'm just going to raise them both by $10 to kind of keep it simple. Don't worry, you're going to be importing this stuff like normal, just like you normally do from your current suppliers and wholesalers, but all I did was change the cost of two components of our recipe item. Now if I come down to the main recipe and I highlight this table and I drag it up a little bit here, let's see what happened. Remember, our database cost was $14.79. Now due to the price increases that were passed through, our costing based off the quantity that's put into the recipe changed, and it's automatically being updated right here so that we can see it. So we want to make sure that we price this baby out appropriately, and we want to apply this cost to a batch that we already have set up. So that's a pretty cool little tool. To do that, all we got to do is come right down here to the bottom and hit this button, add current item to the batch. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop over to the batch here. I'm going to open up my batch header, drag it over here so we can see it, and then I'm going to open up the batch all changes section here as well. So you can see I've got this batch my receipt cost change batch that is going to make this change to this item. When I execute that, you're going to see all the stuff update just like you typically would expect. You can see our cost updated. You can see the table over here. Let me get this out of the way. The table over here for the recipe analysis, all of that stuff updated. Our profitability went down. Remember, we set it up over here, target margin of 30, but it went down because of that price increase from these two items up here. So all that was automated with just a couple button clicks, and away you go. So after a bit of housekeeping, the last thing I want to review in this video is a recipe, well actually multiple recipes being created in one record. So all I'm going to do is hit list recipes, and this is going to pull up all the recipes that were created plus the one we just made from our universal sample demo. So the one we're going to focus on right here is this short loin cut. It's item number 998. I'm going to drag the window down a little bit here so we can take a look at what's going on. In this particular case, we're taking one item from inventory, this big old hunk of meat right here, and we're making multiple items. If we were to scroll through these, and you can see them right down here, we're making T-bones and tenderloins and ambassador steaks and a couple things of hamburger there. So all of these items are being made from this one item. Now you remember what I said just a few minutes ago? That's where these ratio generation tool buttons come into play, depending how you want to build out your cost ratio up here. All these buttons do down here is help us build this cost ratio right up here. And to do that, it's taking this big old hunk of cost from this big old hunk of beef right up here and splitting it out based on the button we push and the criteria we select to the items that we create in the recipe. I believe by default, mine is based on poundage. So if I hit use retail price, I'm going to get a confirmation. You're going to see the cost ratio changes here, not a whole lot, but it does. And if we refresh up here, you'll also see that those same ratios come up here to the recipe table as well. So all we're doing is dispersing and displacing this big old hunk of cost right up here to the various items that we're creating in the recipe. That's all there is to it. Your criteria are retail price, targeted gross margin, or poundage, whichever one you want to use. Well, with both criteria met, that's it for this week's tip. In the next session, we're going to take a look at how to take these recipes and create them with our PDA, with any luck at least. Until then, have a great day.